Hello and welcome back to The Goodness Margin, the place where we find margin for the good things in life. Today we're going to talk about a way that I love saving money. One of the biggest ways I have found that I can save money is through menu planning, and it's through my grocery shopping. Saving money by not eating out, by being intentional about my grocery purchases is one of the biggest ways I can save money. Sometimes we go through our budget and we cut out some of those unnecessary expenses. And then once we've done that, there's really not another way that we can make a big difference in our finances. That's at least what I have found in my own life. But one of the things that I can do is I can be more intentional about the food that we purchase, but I still want to be sure that I'm nourishing my family. So today I'm going to share with you a challenge where you can take 1 month to see how much money that you can save by shopping your own pantry. But first, if you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel, hit that bell. You'll be notified when the next video goes live. So there's another YouTuber that I follow. Her name is Jordan Page, and she dubbed the term shelf timber. So it's during the month of September, she takes the time to do what you've heard me talk about before, shelf cooking. It's something that when we are cooking from our shelf. When we're menu planning from the things that are in our pantry. So rather than creating a menu and then going to the store and then looking at what we have in our pantry, first, we're looking at what's in our pantry and we're seeing what we can cook from. Now, if you've followed me for any length of time, you've heard me talk about menu planning. And that is the way that I do menu plan, is I do shop from my pantry first. But the beauty of this challenge is we are going to see if we can really utilize the stuff that's in our pantry and buy a very little amount of things from the grocery store. We're going to get really creative this month. You can do this for any month that you want to. You could do it for just a week to create a challenge. And what you could do is you could look at what I've spent this week or what I've spent this month versus what I spent in a previous month and really notice that amount of money that you have saved. So let's get started and how we're going to do this. I'm going to break it down into some steps for you. The first thing you want to do is go into your pantry and make a list of all of those items that you have available. What canned goods do you have? What pasta, rice, dried beans, whatever those ingredients are that you have. Maybe you even have an odd ingredient, a can of jarred red peppers that you bought for a meal that you were going to cook and then you never used it. Make a list of all of those ingredients. Then go to your freezer. Maybe it's an outside freezer or the freezer that is connected to your refrigerator inside the house, and make a list of all the things. Maybe you have some leftover chili that you had froze, or maybe you have frozen some vegetables or some fruit, and definitely all of the meat that you have frozen. Make a list of every single thing that you have. So what you're starting with is a list of everything from your pantry and everything from your freezer. That's your first step. Now, step 2 is going to be to make a list of recipes that you noticed right off the bat. I have 2 jars of my favorite spaghetti sauce, my favorite marinara. I have noodles, and I have some ground beef. I am immediately seeing that I can create 2 meals of spaghetti. So on that list, I'm going to mark off those ingredients. I'm going to use those ingredients, and I'm going to this month have 2 times that we have spaghetti. And then you look at those other ingredients again and you see this is another meal that I know is super easy for me to recreate. Or maybe I have frozen some chili, like I said, or I've frozen some roast, and I know that I can just take those meals as they are frozen, thaw them out, heat them up, and I will have that for dinner. So step number 2 is to create a list of meals that you see from that list that's going to be easy for you to make. These are things that you already know how to make that are from the list from your freezer in your pantry. Now, step 3 is where we start to get creative. Maybe you notice a couple of these things that I think, I have never made anything with this ingredient, or I'm not really sure how I'm going to use these things together. This is where using Google or Pinterest or any other type of search feature on your phone or your computer, you're going to go online and you are going to put these ingredients in. Last year, when I was doing this shelf cooking challenge for an entire month, I had about 5 ingredients left, and it was the last day of the month. It was a Sunday afternoon, and on Sunday morning, I was like, okay, I want to create something with these. I think I had some couscous and I had some frozen yellow squash. It was just a couple of different things that I had not cooked with on a regular basis. So I literally put those 5 ingredients in the search bar on my phone. And the next thing I knew, I had a recipe that was actually really delicious. I was so surprised that I was able to cook this recipe. You are going to go in and you're going to search those ingredients. Search chicken and rice recipes if you're trying to mix things up and you have a lot of frozen chicken and you have some dried rice. Go through and get creative to find some recipes that you can make. And then step 4 is you're going to make a meal plan for that week. What are the things that I'm going to make out of these things that I have on hand? What is the meal plan going to be for the week? Because if we prepare ahead, that way it's going to be less likely we're going to decide to stop through the drive-thru or order pizza, because we already know that we have a plan when we get home from work of what we're going to make. So step 4 is to create a meal plan for that week. And then step 5 is going to be to purchase as little as possible. We're going to try to purchase as few things that we can from the grocery store. We're really going to try to get creative with our ingredients. And the point of this challenge is to see how little that I have to purchase, because I'm going to be shopping my pantry. I'm going to be shopping my freezer. I'm going to be saving a lot of money this month and getting really creative with eating at home. So here are 3 additional tips that I want to share with you. Number 1 is to keep it simple. When I was a little girl, my mother made the most delicious meals at home. She would always have like a main dish, a meat, something like that. And then usually we would have at least 3 sides to go with that. And then we would additionally have some rolls or some cornbread or something like that to go with it. And when my husband and I first got married, I sort of overwhelmed myself by trying to recreate that for us every single night. And finally, we had a whole conversation because we're both working full time, and I really started hating cooking dinner for us. And we realized, you know what? We don't have to do what we've always done or what we thought was normal. We can create our new normal, and we're going to make it simple. So as long as we have a nourishing meal, even if it's a soup, if it's one pot, if it's one dish, that's okay. So keep it simple. Don't try to create a really complicated meal every single night. The other night, I used some dried beans and some sausage that we had on hand. I simmered those all day, and I poured them over some rice, and we had some cornbread. It was the simplest meal, but it was unbelievably delicious and nourishing for our family. Don't complicate this. Keep it simple. You're just trying to eat dinner. You're not trying to recreate a Michelin star meal. The second tip is leftovers are your friend. Let's say that I am chopping up a pepper and I have half the pepper left over. Rather than throwing that back in the refrigerator, unless I know for sure I'm going to be using it within a day or two, I'm going to chop that up, put it in the freezer. That way, the next time that I need some pepper, all I have to do is pull that out of the freezer. I love to do that with onion or anything like that. So when you have something left over from a meal, freeze it. That's a great way to make that item last a lot longer than it would have originally. But also, if I'm creating a meal like chili, why don't I go ahead and double that recipe up? Or even spaghetti sauce, let's double that recipe. I will take half of it or whatever is left over and put it in the freezer. And then I have a meal that's going to be super simple for me to make for my family in the future. Now, the third tip is one of my favorites. And for those of you who don't cook often, this may seem a little bit daunting, but I encourage you to try it out. The third tip is to substitute. Sometimes we'll look at a recipe and it calls for a certain ingredient and I don't have that ingredient. Maybe it's a particular type of pasta or beans or even a meat or a seasoning. And so where we can spend money lots of times is going to the store, buying a $5 bottle of a particular type of seasoning that we're never going to use again. For most things, there is a substitution. You can use the internet to search and find a common substitution for that, or you can just think through that recipe and decide what sounds good. Maybe there's a similar meal that I've made and I recognize the seasoning mix that they have and I know that I can mix it up. So be careful to not think you have to follow a recipe to the T. Look for substitutions. You might discover that you actually create something really great. So I'd love to hear from you. Are you going to do this challenge? And if you do, what are some of the favorite recipes that you end up creating during this month? How much money are you going to save this month by cooking from your shelf